There are places that you simply shouldn't visit, no matter how much you want to go on vacation, for example lakes that will kill you in 1 hour, caves that cook you and radioactive islands where rats will infect you with bubonic plague. I don't want to scare you away from traveling, but after this video you won't believe how dangerous the planet can be. Road of Death. When traveling by car, I advise you to avoid the Yungas Road in Bolivia. This nightmare route meanders along a sheer cliff, rising more than 4 kilometers above sea level. In some places its width is 3 meters and there are no barriers to protect you from falling. At 600 meters, clouds of dust from the bad road make it difficult for drivers to see, and humid winds from the nearby jungle lead to frequent downpours and landslides. It is not surprising that the place is nicknamed the Road of Death despite its reputation and is used by many desperate drivers. Cars and trucks traveling towards each other have to balance on the very edge of a narrow road. In the 90s, from 200 to 300 people died here, and every year they lost control of the car and fell into the abyss. Fortunately, in 2006, Bolivia built a safe road that most drivers choose and can be understood. But if you still want to drive along the Road of Death, which is illegal, although not controlled, remember that there will be no turning back. I do not recommend turning around on this path. The Yungas Road proves that the world can be a scary place, so sitting at home and watching YouTube all day is rational decision. Cave of Crystals. Some of the most beautiful places in the world, also deadly, like a cave of crystals located 305 meters below the mountain in Mexico. This underground cave is filled with huge white selenite crystals. They were formed by volcanic minerals in the water that crystallized as the caves cooled over the millennia. Now several adults can walk on them. Their length is 12 meters and they weigh up to 55 tons, but there is no need to rush to go to these crystals armed with a selfie stick. The cave is located above a layer of magma, which means that the temperature here often reaches 45 degrees Celsius and the humidity is 99%. As a result, the air is so saturated with moisture that sweat can't evaporate from your skin to cool you down, and within just 10 minutes you could be at risk of heat stroke, organ failure, and death. Scientists who study these crystals wear a special cooling suit with a cylinder, and even then they can stay here for a maximum of 1 hour. Perhaps I'll take a better look at this cave in Google Images. Snake Island. You have to be crazy to visit this island. In Brazil it is called Ilha Taquimolda Grande, but is better known as the Island of Snakes. In the depths of the jungle crawl about 4,000 dangerous reptiles that are just waiting to bite visitors. These snakes belong to a rare species called the island bat rape, and they are one of the deadliest in Latin America. Their venom contains the toxin heme, which melts the flesh, destroying red blood cells and causing death within an hour. In general, these snakes are not to be trifled with, but how did they end up in this strange place? Once upon a time, the Island of Snakes was annexed to the coast of Brazil, but the sea level rose for many centuries and separated it from the mainland. Since there were no predators on it but there were many birds, the snakes remaining on the island were actively breeding. And now it is estimated that per square meter of the island there are from 1 to 5 bot robes of, that is, tourists are always separated by a couple of meters from these dangerous reptiles. The risk is so great that the Brazilian Navy has banned people from visiting the island, with the exception of scientists who conduct important research here. You know, I'm even kind of glad that they did this. Death Valley. Imagine a place where it is so hot that you can make scrambled eggs on the ground. There is such a place, and it is Death Valley in California, a boiling desert basin where the temperature can rise to record heights of up to 56 degrees Celsius. With temperatures at their highest ever recorded, deep craters holding back scorching air and 4 mountain ranges preventing rain clouds from forming, the valley remains in perpetual drought, putting Death Valley tourists at risk of heat stroke and dehydration, with up to 3 deaths a year. Visitors also need be always on the lookout for the valley's many dangerous animals, including rattlesnakes, black widow scorpions, and even mountain lions. This is already a valley of horrors, but if all this does not scare you away, then under no circumstances take off your shoes there. In 1917, One tourist was hospitalized with third-degree burns after walking through the valley barefoot. And the earth here heats up to 94 degrees, and although you can fry an egg on the ground, you shouldn't do it. Park rangers remove shells and empty packages every day and tell visitors that their love for scrambled eggs has crossed all boundaries. Take a packed lunch with you. Oymyakon. From extreme heat to extreme cold, nowhere will make you shiver more than Oymyakon in eastern Russia. This town of 500 people, the coldest permanently populated place, has an average winter temperature of -50 degrees, but sometimes it drops even further to -68. On Mars, the average temperature is -63 degrees, so you would be a little warmer there than in Oymyakon. Of course, at such temperatures it is not easy to live here, since the pipes freeze. Most people have a toilet located on the street with cesspools. It is difficult to plant anything in the frozen ground and the locals eat frozen meat. A simple flat tire or lost key can be dangerous, because every second outside brings frostbite closer, and if a person dies, local residents will have to light a fire in the cemetery for several days so that the earth will melt and they can dig. If you go to Oymyakon, take your wallet, because keeping warm is an expensive pleasure. To safely go outside, residents wrap themselves in thick fur coats that can cost more than $1,500. The average salary here is $600 a month, and many people take out loans to buy the furs they need to survive. Even with furs turn the cold air, eyelashes and saliva into painful icy needles in a couple of minutes, and after that the freezer at home will seem like just a tropical paradise. Creepy holes. What is 2,000 kilometers long, 70 kilometers wide and full of creepy creatures? There is no line at McDonald's, and the Mariana Trench, located in the Pacific Ocean between Hawaii and the Philippines, this hole goes 11 kilometers deep into the Earth's crust and is the deepest point on the planet. The Mariana Trench is so deep that if Everest is lowered into it, the peak will be at a depth of more than 2 kilometers, imagine, and as you might have guessed, the trench is not suitable for relaxing swimming. Light does not penetrate there, which means the water is absolutely black, impenetrable, and just above the freezing point. The pressure at the bottom breaks bones. It is 8 tons per square inch, which is 1,000 times more than atmospheric pressure. On land, this means that if you were to emerge from a submarine while in a cavity, the air pockets in your body would collapse under the weight of the water and say goodbye to working lungs. If that's not enough, Mount Everest has been conquered by thousands of people over the years, but fewer than 20 have reached the bottom of the Mariana Trench, so we know relatively little about what might be lurking in that dark water. But scientists know what lies inside another 124-meter deep chasm, the Great Blue Hole in Belize, a depression that appeared 14,000 years ago as a limestone cave but was then flooded by the sea. It is so large that it can be seen from space and attracts thousands of tourists a year, but it must be remembered that inexperienced divers can encounter strong currents around the edges of the hole that can send an adult into the abyss, and there are also plenty of sharks. In the Blue Hole, researchers noticed reef sharks, nurse sharks, hammerhead fish, and black and white sharks, and they all get along together. Fortunately, they rarely attack people, but anyone who looked at the jaws would probably prefer to look at this hole from afar. And if you feel safe on land, then remember that the ocean floor is not the only place where there are dangerous holes. For example, in a Russian diamond mine 500 meters deep, in the 17th year a leak led to it filling with 10 million cubic feet of water. This is more than 100 Olympic swimming pools. It would be a real nightmare to find yourself in a flood in such a place, and this hole is so large that it is forbidden to fly a helicopter over it so that they are not sucked in by air currents, and there are fears that the warm rising air and cold air on the surface will create a powerful vortex pulling transport. Skeleton Coast. You can understand a lot from the name of a place, and the northern part of the Namibian coast only proves this. The Portuguese of the 16th century called it the Gates of Hell, the Bushmen of Namibia called it the land created by God in anger. Now it is called the Coast of Skeletons and, as all these names suggest, it is definitely not paradise. Near the sea coast of Skeletons, This part of the Namib Desert is a vast, inhospitable place where drinking water is almost impossible to find, which means even though you are right by the sea, you can easily die of thirst if you do not take supplies of drinking water with you. Also among the dunes wander such predators as lions and hyenas, cheetahs, and jackals, which attack those who are lost. If you look closely, you can see white bones, their mining, an ominous reminder that this place was called the Skeleton Coast for a reason. Walking along the golden sand, you can see the rusty foundations of about 1,000 ships. The water in this area is very dangerous due to strong currents, pitfalls, thick fog, and powerful wind, so ships run aground. The coastline has been adding to a growing collection of shipwrecks for centuries. Can you imagine what it's like to survive a shipwreck and end up on a beach with no drinking water with wandering lions? Sometimes life is just unfair. Dangerous lakes. Some lakes can be deadly, such as Lake Karachay in Russia. This beautiful body of water is so polluted that just 1 hour on its shores will kill you. From 1951 to 1953, the Soviet authorities used it to dump radioactive waste from the Mayak nuclear weapons plant, resulting in such pollution that the World Watch Institute, an environmental research organization in the United States, named Karachay the most polluted place in the world. To determine the toxicity level of a body of water, scientists use the unit sievert, which measures the effect of radiation on the body. Just 1 sievert can cause serious illness, and during tests in 1990, Lake Karachay released a dose of 5.6 sieverts per hour that would kill you in 50 minutes. The lake was filled with concrete in 15 to limit radiation, but scientists believe that somewhere around 1 billion gallons of groundwater was contaminated as a result of the Soviet Union's decision to dump radioactive waste in Karachay. This led to an increase in the incidence of leukemia by 41%, as well as other types of cancer in the Chelyabinsk region. Very bad, comrades, but lakes can be dangerous even without radiation. So the boiling lake in the Mantrue Piton National Park in Dominica is a bubbling cauldron, or more precisely, it is a water-filled hole that releases volcanic gases from a layer of magma underground. These gases heat the water in the lake to 92 degrees Celsius, so that a person who decides to enter it will quickly boil, just like an egg. But you can't talk about dangerous lakes without mentioning Natron in Tanzania. The water in this lake is extremely alkaline due to the high content of sodium carbonate flowing down from the nearby slopes of volcanoes, so the pH level here is 10.5, almost like ammonia, and the lake can burn almost any animal. Moreover, if the animal dies, on the thrown lake the salt-rich water dries out the remains and turns the body into a hard, petrified shell. As befits an ominous lake, the water in it is crimson due to the abundance of microorganisms, naked archaea, which are very fond of salt water and produce crimson pigments. Blood red water with fossilized remains is not the best place for a picnic, really. Devil's Pool. What are you willing to do for the perfect photo? If you don't mind risking your life for the sake of a stream of likes, then you need to go to the Devil's Pool, on the very edge of Victoria Falls in Zambia. A narrow rock outcropping separates swimmers from a 108-meter drop above the rough water, but fortunately the pool is relatively safe. From mid-August to December, unless of course you do stupid things like stand on your hands on the edge. But from January to July during the rainy season in Zimbabwe, the water level rises and the current intensifies and can carry a person off a cliff, but whenever you go you will need to beware of crocodiles and hippos living in the Zambezi. The river feeds the Devil's Pool. Such a dangerous photo is worth the risk. What do you think? Write in the comments. Danakil Depression. The Danakil Depression is one of the strangest places on the planet, a surreal landscape in northern Ethiopia that looks like a radioactive wasteland with yellow craters and green water. But don't trust this unearthly beauty. The stunning volcanic depression can kill you in every possible way. To begin with, Danakil is located at the junction of 3 very mobile tectonic plates. Their movement causes regular earthquakes and cracks appear in the ground that can absorb inattentive people. These cracks emit clouds of poisonous gases of sulfur and chlorine, filling the air with a strong smell of rotten eggs. Due to the shifts of tectonic plates, Springs are also formed that are filled with hot water, heated by molten magma. It heats the minerals in the water, creating amazing landscapes of multicolored salt crusts and crystals, but do not rush to dive there. The temperature in these bright pools can reach 108 degrees Celsius. But that's not all. In the depression there are two active volcanoes at once. In one Erdale there is a seething lake of lava at the top which sometimes goes over the edge and kills everything in its path. This place looks beautiful, but remember the Danakil depression can make a very cruel Danakil. Infected islands. Imagine a tropical island, sun, sand, and palm trees and a huge concrete dome with radioactive waste. Wait a minute, the radioactive dome really exists on the Runette Island, part of the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Ocean between Hawaii and the Philippines. From 46 to 58, the U.S. Army used these islands as a testing ground for 67 nuclear bombs, which caused severe damage to the local ecosystem. More. 60 years later, they are still not suitable for life, according to a 19th-year study by scientists from the University of Columbia. The local coral reef of Bikini Atoll is 10 times more radioactive than Chernobyl itself. What did the United States do to solve this problem? In 1977, the military tried to clean up our Runette Island by burying radioactive waste under a dome with a diameter of 107 meters, but this structure was never planned as a permanent solution to the problem, and it is already beginning to crack, threatening to pollute the environment again. If you are not impressed by the Marshall Islands, take a look at Renaissance Island in the southwest of the Aral Sea between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan with an area of 200 square kilometers. During the Soviet era, secret biological weapons were tested here and anthrax, smallpox, and plague were removed. When the USSR collapsed in the 91st year, the island was hastily evacuated and the laboratories as well. Military chemicals were left abandoned. In the last decade they began to leak and highly resistant strains of infectious diseases entered the soil. As a result, there is a possibility that rodents and fleas are carriers of bubonic plague or disease worse. Who would have thought that an island with laboratories full of viruses would be so dangerous? Elephant foot. If you come to the place in this photo, you will die in just 5 minutes. This strange alien blob is called an elephant's foot, and it appeared as a result of the Chernobyl disaster. One of the worst in history. If you forgot, in 1986, the fourth reactor of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded, a huge amount of radioactive material and fuel was released, and the radiation from the explosion reached Sweden. Now an area of more than 2,000 square kilometers called the exclusion zone is still considered uninhabitable. Although controlled tourism is allowed here, one place in Chernobyl is closed to visitors, and that is the Elephant's Foot. A piece of material called corium that formed from a mixture of nuclear fuel and molten metal that spilled out after the explosion. As of 2019, the leg was encased in a protective steel structure, a new safety dome that took 2 decades to build and is taller than the Statue of Liberty. As long as you stand outside the dome you are safe, but if you decide to go inside the consequences will be dire. After 30 seconds next to the Elephant's Foot, radioactive particles fall on you and you will begin to feel severe nausea and dizziness. After 2 minutes the cells will begin to die, and after 5 minutes you will already die. In general, no one's foot should set foot in the room with the Elephant's Foot. Treacherous waters. When you think of the Bermuda Triangle you imagine something like this. We have heard stories about sea monsters, whirlpools, and storms, but how dangerous is it in reality? If you didn't know, this is an area in the Atlantic between Miami, the Bermuda Triangle, and Puerto Rico where more than 50 ships and 20 planes allegedly disappeared without a trace. Conspiracy theorists have come up with various explanations, including a giant whirlpool devouring people, UFOs, and deadly technology from lost Atlantis. But while the Bermuda Triangle is certainly dangerous, that danger comes from the unpredictable weather of the Atlantic Ocean and not from the supernatural. The area is subject to sudden severe storm or white squall and water tornadoes and waterspouts, which are not uncommon in subtropical waters. Such unpredictable elements are indeed dangerous for ships and aircraft and sometimes damage them or throw them off course. Considering that some of the busiest sea routes pass through the triangle, it is not surprising that all this from time to time leads to the disappearance of transport. Do not forget that for every missing ship and plane, there are thousands that remained unharmed. But unlike the Bermuda Triangle, some bodies of water are actually deadly dangerous. For example, this charming stream in Yorkshire, one of the deadliest bodies of water in the world. It is called Bolton Street, and it is believed that no one who fell into it got out alive. Why did a simple stream become so creepy, despite how it looks? Bolton Street is not an ordinary stream, but a powerful river called the Lord, and stretches for 105 kilometers across Yorkshire. Having reached Bolton, the river squeezes through a stone channel, narrowing, from 9 meters to about 80 meters in width. Excess water falls underground and it flows at breakneck speed through a labyrinth of underground crevices. If some person lost his balance and fell into Bolton Street, he would probably be caught the current and carried him into the abyss under the river. The strange lesson is that it is probably safer to swim in the Bermuda Triangle than in a river in Yorkshire. Every day you learn something new. What dangerous places you have visited, tell us in the comments under the video. Thank you for watching.